Hi everybody, it's Leela from Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm wanting to show you how I create my white shimmer tumbler. The reason why I'm making this video for you today is because I have a lot of clients who ask me for a white shimmer tumbler but with no glitter. And instead of just spray painting it white, I like to add some stuff to it to kind of make it shimmer and still look appealing, and rather than just this flat tumbler and this blotchy tumbler. I'm going to go over the supplies that I use and then we'll go ahead and get started. You're going to be needing a stainless steel tumbler. And with this tumbler, what I did was I prepped it. If you do want to know how to prep your tumbler, I will be posting a link in the description below. I do have a YouTube video on how I prep my tumblers. I did spray paint this tumbler white. I use flat white Rust-Oleum. I have spray paint plus primer. Rust-Oleum. You do not need the spray paint plus primer, but I do recommend using matte or satin finish white spray paint. I am using Amazing Clear Cast epoxy. For my 30 ounce today, I am using a total of 1 tablespoon of epoxy. So half a tablespoon for part A and half a tablespoon for part B. I am using a Dixie cup, popsicle stick, acrylic paint. I did get this from Walmart, the barrel, and mica powder. I did purchase this from Amazon. This comes in a set of all assortment of colors, and I will post this link in the description below. So what I'm going to do first is I spray painted my tumbler. I spray painted it white with my flat white spray paint from Rust-Oleum, and then I'm going to mix my epoxy. And I'm just going to pour one on top of the other and mix them. I do mix my epoxy for about 2 to 3 minutes. The way you can tell your epoxy is completely mixed is whenever it goes from a foamy or a foggy look epoxy to a clear substance. So this is a clear liquid. And if you do have a lot of bubbles inside your epoxy, grab your heat gun and just hit it with the heat gun a little bit for about 2 seconds or so, and then the bubble should pop. Most of the bubble should pop. Once you put the epoxy back on the tumbler, you hit it with the heat gun again to pop any remaining bubbles. So my epoxy is about mixed. I did say I was using a Dixie cup, but this is such a small amount of epoxy. I'm just going to reuse a cup that I had, my measuring cup. Now I'm going to add the mica powder and the acrylic paint into my epoxy. So I'm going to open the mica powder, and then I'm going to take another popsicle stick, and you only need a little bit of mica powder for this. So let me show you how little, about this amount. That's all I use, and really that might be too much, but just want to show you how little you need. I don't know if it can focus. My camera will focus, and you just dump that right into your epoxy mix. I always take out my mica powder with a popsicle stick. I think it's a lot easier than pouring it in, because sometimes if I pour it in, it does go everywhere. I think I've said this in my other videos. I have a very heavy hand when it comes to doing everything. So the safest way for me is using a popsicle stick. And all I'm doing right now is stirring the epoxy. And all the mica powder is doing is creating the shimmer. That's all I'm wanting the mica powder to do. I'm not wanting to change this white with the mica powder. This is just for the shimmer, and you can see it does have shimmer on here. Then I'm going to take my white acrylic paint, my apple barrel white acrylic paint. Now acrylic paint, you don't want to add too much, because if you do add too much acrylic paint, your epoxy will get sticky. That's all the acrylic paint I'm going to add. So I did about 2 drips or 2 drops of acrylic paint, and I'm going to stir. I'm just wanting to stir until this becomes a solid white. All the lines should be out of where the acrylic paint was poured. Let me see up close. Now with acrylic paint, the more or the darker the color acrylic paint, the less paint you need. So the lighter the color, the more. So how I can tell is this is kind of transparent still. I can add a little bit more acrylic paint. And if I'm working with a lot of color, if I'm working with like multiple colors of acrylic paint, I sometimes have another batch of epoxy or a little bit more epoxy left over to the side. So if I do add more acrylic paint, I can always add more epoxy to even out the mixture, just in case. So let me stir this, and I think we have just the right amount of acrylic paint and mica powder. I'm stirring this. Stir the epoxy, and you want to make sure that all of the little pieces of acrylic paint is out of the epoxy, because this will show on your cup. So whenever you do this, you will see little pieces or dots or strings of the white acrylic paint. Make sure you mix that very, very well to get that out, because whenever you put this on your tumbler, you're going to see little spots of like kind of dried up. It's going to look like dried up acrylic paint. You can get them out with tweezers or with your finger, but why have to if you don't have to? And then what I always do is I hit it for a couple seconds with my heat gun. I do have a Wagner heat gun. I did purchase this from Lowe's for about $20. It's just a habit for me to hit all of my epoxy with my heat gun. So once this is mixed, this is when I'm going to put it on the tumbler. And I usually have the tumbler rotating my way, but for video purposes, I'm going to rotate it y'all's way. And I like doing this. Like I said, I get a lot of tumbler requests to make a white base. I don't want glitter, but I just want a white base, and I want roses on it, or my name on it, or another design. And I don't like just spray painting it white and then putting the design on. I think it gives it such different look whenever you add that mica powder for shimmer, and then you add the white acrylic paint for to make it not as transparent. My cup's falling off the turner here. There we go. Push it towards your way. So I do this for a lot of tumblers, and even if you know what the Northern Lights tumbler is, even for like a Northern Lights tumbler, for that black background, instead of just spray painting it black and then putting the epoxy on, I put the shimmer black epoxy, or excuse me, I put the mica powder on and then some black acrylic paint. You're gonna put epoxy on it anyway, so at least I do. If somebody wants just a clear base, a plain base tumbler, I always put epoxy over and then I put the design on. So that way, if I do just spray paint it and put the design on, let's say I put a decal on and I don't like it, probably if I take that decal off, it's gonna rip the spray paint up anyways, and then I'm gonna have to re-spray paint the tumbler. And if you like, I do have some clients, I just want a little bit of glitter, but I don't want a fully glitter tumbler. You can take your white glitter, your transparent glitter, white glitter, and you can sprinkle it on top of this, or you can add it to the epoxy mix. This is your canvas, and you can do whatever you like, or whatever the customer likes at least. And then you just make sure you have an even coat. And since this is white, just like how I mentioned in some of my other videos, it is hard to work with white glitter. It's hard to work with white everything. It's like wearing a white blouse and drinking red wine. Not even drinking red wine. It's just, white just gets dirty easier. White car, white everything. So I just go through and I pick out all of the spots, if any. I pick out the spots on my tumbler, and I just make sure it's very smooth. And then once this is finished, not finished, but once I'm completely satisfied with the amount of epoxy that's on this tumbler, that's when I'll just hit it with a heat gun. And I let this spin for another 4 to 6 hours, depending on how thick of epoxy coat that you put on here. So it does range from each tumbler. So about 4 to 6 hours, and then I turn off my spinner and then I let it sit for another 18 hours, a total time of 24 hours to dry. And I do not put any decals or stickers or anything on my tumbler until it has not been touched for 24 hours. Because if I do let this sit for about 12 hours, if I put a decal on here and I don't like the decal, when I go to rip it up, I might take the epoxy with it. The epoxy has not been completely dried or cured. So do keep that in mind as well. I'm going to hit it with a heat gun. And if you did notice, as I hit it with a heat gun, as it kind of spread out and stayed on the tumbler, I should say, you saw the lines that I created with my fingers. It kind of mixed in and blended in. So as this spins, it's going to blend in even more, and these imperfections, the lines that I did with my fingers, it will blend together and it will be a solid tumbler. And like I said in the beginning, I did use half of part A, half a tablespoon of part A and half a tablespoon of part B, and this is how much I have left over. So I think it's safe to say about 1 tablespoon of 1 tablespoon mixture of epoxy is a good amount for a 30-ounce tumbler. I have a little bit left over. I could have put it in more on the tumbler, but it looks like I have a good coverage. And thank you so much for watching my tutorial, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.